Welcome, beautiful souls, to the Spiritual Sanctuary, a sacred place where we explore the divine feminine, spiritual traditions, your intuition, healing, and meaningful ways to bring the sacred into our everyday lives. I'm your host, Bertena, and today we are entering the golden season of the first harvest. We're going to explore Lammas and the older Gaelic festival of Lughnasadh. We'll talk about the history behind these celebrations, and we'll talk about the gatherings and the spiritual meaning of the harvest. We'll look at how you can honor the season at home without needing to perform a long or complicated ritual. But before we begin, I want to thank Cosmic Connections in Nashville for sponsoring this episode. Cosmic Connections is a beautiful spiritual store and a gathering place filled with crystals and books, candles, divination tools, and meaningful gifts. I, along with many other people, offer classes and reading and healing sessions there. And listeners of this podcast can use the code Bertena, Bertena, podcast 10, to receive 10% off online or in-person purchases at yourcosmicconnection.com. I'll also be at Cosmic Connections this Sunday leading a special Lammas Women's Circle. Later in the episode, I'll share more about why gathering in a circle is especially meaningful during this particular season, but I just wanted to let you know about all these wonderful things. So for now, I need you to take a slow breath. Allow your shoulders to soften and let yourself become present. I want you to imagine a field of golden grain moving beneath the late summer sun. The earth is full and the gardens are producing. The days remain warm, but the light is beginning to change, and we've reached the season of the first harvest. Lammas is traditionally observed around August 1st in the Northern Hemisphere, and it falls approximately halfway between the summer solstice and the autumn equinox. These halfway points are called cross-quarter days, and they mark the places between the solstices and the equinoxes and where there's important seasonal turning points. And this has come through several ancient European cultures. So, to us, August the 1st may still feel like summer. School hasn't quite gone back in yet. The days are still hot, gardens are growing, and it's still summertime. But if we pay attention, we're going to begin to notice a subtle shift. The daylight is slowly decreasing. Some plants are now moving from flowering into producing seeds. You notice the field of grains are becoming very golden, and fruits and vegetables are ripening. The wonderful bounty of earth is beginning to reveal itself, and that is why Lammas is called the first harvest. The name comes from the Old English term commonly understood to mean loaf mass. Now, in medieval Christian observance, loaves were made from the first harvested grain that could be brought to church to be blessed, and the celebration joined agricultural thanksgiving with Christian worship. This first loaf was more than an ordinary piece of bread. It represented survival. It meant that the grain had successfully grown and that food could be prepared and stored. It offered hope that the people would have enough nourishment to carry them through the colder seasons. Now, think about today. It's difficult to understand how sacred that first loaf would have felt. Many of us can go to the store and purchase bread at any time. We don't have to watch the sky or wonder whether the rain will come. We don't have to depend directly upon the success of one local field for our family's survival. For us, food is easily packaged, transported, and placed on store shelves, and we've become disconnected from its story. But every loaf has a story. There's a seed, and there was soil, and rain, and sunlight. More importantly, there were people that planted, harvested, transported, ground, mixed, baked, packaged, and delivered this food to us. Even though Lammas is different than what it was during ancient times, it still invites us to remember that nourishment does not simply appear. It has relationships, and we all are dependent upon each other. It comes from the earth, from human labor, natural cycles, community, patience, and circumstances that are not entirely under our control. Now, today, many people frequently use the words Lammas and Lughnasadh interchangeably, especially within contemporary Wheel of the Year traditions. However, I want to tell you a story about how these are different culturally and their religious histories. You all know I love history, so sit back and just listen away. Lammas developed as an Anglo-Saxon and Christian celebration that was connected with the blessing of the first grain and the first loaf. Lughnasadh, it's spelled Lughnasadh. So if you've seen that word, that's what I'm talking about. It's an older Gaelic seasonal festival, and it's associated with Ireland and Scotland and the Isle of Man. And if you are from this area where I'm from, particularly Eastern Kentucky and then in the South, most of us are either Anglo-Saxon or very much Scot-Irish. So we've heard of both of these. And Lughnasadh marks the beginning of the harvest season, and it was the one that was observed on August 1st or on a nearby Sunday. It's one of the four major Gaelic seasonal festivals. The others are Samhain, Imbolc, and Beltane. And Samhain marked the approach of winter. Imbolc announced the beginning of spring, and Beltane welcomed the summer. Well, Lughnasadh marks the beginning of harvest and the move into my favorite season, which is fall. These celebrations were not merely dates on a calendar like we see today, where our iPhone pops up and says, hey, today is August 1st. They're really reflected with the seasonal realities on which the people at that time depended. When would animals be moved? I know there are cows next to me where I live, and I go out and look for the cows, and when they're gone, I wonder if they've been moved to the next grazing area or if they've been moved on. We wonder when crops would be planted, when would food be gathered, and when would the community travel, trade? When would they get married, feast, or even prepare for winter? I know we have a lot of June and July weddings, but many times the weddings took place during that time or later, and it was always based upon harvest, whenever it was slowest. Whenever the festivals happened that brought the communities together, they organized their lives around this rhythm of the land. Now, the word Lughnasadh is connected with Lugh, Lugh, and he's one of the more important figures of Irish mythology. The festival is often understood as a gathering associated with him, and he's simply not a harvest god, as he's sometimes described in a lot of modern explanations. His mythology is a lot broader. He's associated with skill and craftsmanship. Think about all that went in during that time. He is associated with kingship and warfare, but also poetry and art. And one of his best known titles identifies him as a person of many trades or many arts. I hear people go, oh, I am um, a master of many or a master of none. But this is the thing. We should have many talents and many arts because it helps us survive. And for him, it makes him especially appropriate for a harvest gathering. A harvest requires more than just planting the seed. It requires watching, requires physical labor. It requires the science and the knowledge of weather and soil. It requires timing and cooperation and endurance and preservation, how to cook, how to craft things, how to trade, how to speak to people, and how to organize communities. So the harvest is not created through just one skill. It's produced through many skills working together. And Lugh represents that many skilled nature. Now, his present asks us to recognize the abilities that we have developed and consider how we use our gifts. In Irish mythology, he's a member of the Tuatha De Danann. It's a spiritual people that found their medieval that we've read about in medieval literature, specifically Irish literature. And it's one of the most familiar stories about him tells his arrival to Tara and to his seat of kinship. When he arrives, the gatekeeper asks what skills he possesses, and he names one ability, but he's told that someone inside already has that skill. He names another, and again, he's told that that role is already filled, and he continues naming his ability warrior and craftsman and poet and musician and healing and skilled arts. And eventually, he asked the court whether there was one person who possessed all these abilities together, and they said no. And because of this combined mastery, he's admitted. So, this story offers an important message for those of us who have traveled through several careers and callings and identities. This story touches to me personally. Sometimes we believe that we're required to only choose one gift, and we ask ourselves, am I a teacher or a healer? Am I spiritual or am I practical? Are you creative and kind of everywhere, or are you really logical and organized? Are you intuitive or are you educated? Are you a leader or a student? And this story reminds us that our strengths may come from the combinations of this gift. You do not have to reduce yourself to one word. Your lived experience, your education, your hardships, your spiritual practices, your creativity, and your relationships all become the part of who you are at this time. I have many people going, well, you try to learn everything and you try to do everything. No, I love to learn everything, and I'm good at some things and I'm not good at other things. But I take all that I have, my education, my experience in the world in criminology, my experience in sociology, my experience in higher education, the hardships that I've faced, my spiritual practices of yoga and meditation and Reiki and goddess practices, my background in Christianity, my background in history, my creativity of creating classes, and the fact that I love leading women's circles. And that's the thing. It all comes together. You're listening to a history lesson or a folklore story right now. That comes from my love of history. It comes from my love of wanting to know who did this first and why are we doing this? And it comes and brings together community. It's history, it's sociology. And Lughnasadh was a time when all of the skills at that time could be demonstrated and celebrated through games and athletic contests and horsemanship and music and storytelling and trade and art and public gatherings. And it was a festival. It wasn't a private spiritual observance, it was community. Now, historical and folkloric traditions describe Lughnasadh gatherings that could include fairs and markets, horse racing and dancing and storytelling. There were legal agreements that happened during this time, weddings, feasting. People traveled to wells and sacred hills and meaningful places. And the customs varied by region and it changed over time. But the important things were that people traveled to meet one another. They brought goods to exchange or sell because they could not create everything, but they knew that they loved what other people did. Communities renewed their relationships and young people met potential partners. Yeah, lots and lots of potential partners. Disputes could be addressed. News and stories were shared. They didn't have TikTok and iPhones and all of that, newspapers. That's how they got their stories. They displayed all of their gifts. There were games and competitions that happen. And it's important to recognize that mythology and medieval literature and folklore, archaeology, and later retelling sometimes overlap in ways that make it difficult to separate precise historical fact from sacred history. But sacred stories do not need to be treated as literal newspaper reports to carry truth. They reveal what communities valued. The Lughnasadh stories tell us that people valued the land and skill and remembrance and community. I want to tell you about one of the most enduring features of this season, and it was gathering at natural places. People climbed hills and mountains and visited holy wells. And I love wells and portals. I just find them so magical. They walked the routes that their ancestors did. They gathered near lakes or rivers, and they felt like all of this held spiritual importance. In later centuries, some of these gatherings became known as like Garland Sunday or Bilberry Sunday, or just local titles, kind of like how we have strawberry festivals and things like that. People would gather berries and they would meet and socialize, and families shared food. Pilgrims prayed. They performed customary dances at the wells and sacred sites. And the climb to this sacred hill and the space carried a lot of meaning. When we travel upwards, we leave the ordinary path for a while. We see the landscape differently. We experience effort and discomfort and perspective and arrival. And when you're on a sacred hill, it becomes a place between earth and sky. The pilgrims also remind us that spiritual practice once involved the body more than it does now. People walked and they carried food. They experienced the sun and the rain and the wind and the mud, and they gathered together in physical places together. Spirituality was not only something that they thought about, it's something they did with their bodies and on the land. Now, Lughnasadh and Lammas are sometimes described as harvest celebrations, but it's important to remember that these traditions mark the beginning of the harvest season, but this is just the first harvest, not the final one. The grain at this time might have been ready, but other crops are still needing time. And the success of the entire season is not yet guaranteed. They would celebrate these first fruits while they're still living with uncertainty. And that makes these festivals especially relevant to our own lives. We often believe that we are only allowed to celebrate when everything's done. We tell ourselves, I can celebrate when I get this project done. I can rest when everything gets done. I'll be proud of myself when I reach this final goal. I'll be successful when I have everyone's approval. But the thing is, we need to notice progress before completion. That first loaf did not mean every field had been harvested. It just meant that something had ripened, that there was growth and gratitude. So think about this. What is your first harvest right now? Are you setting healthier boundaries? Are you finally enrolling in school or in a class? Have you finished just the first chapter of a book? I know we discuss in book club that we don't always get the book read, but did you at least get the first chapter? Did you survive a difficult season? Did you rest? Did you start asking about or requesting things that you need? Did you start telling the truth about stuff or trusting your intuition? Each of these are worth recognition. You may not have reached your destination or the goal, but you are not standing where you began. Now, I want to tell you about marriage and some of the other gatherings. Lughnasadh gatherings were associated with matchmaking and temporary marriage traditions, okay? One of them involved couples entering a trial union for a limited period, sometimes described as a year and a day. Some people say that they connect these unions with the gathering of Tailtiu, which was the event of practices of games that marked a certainty. But no matter what, there's always the idea of Lughnasadh in relationships, the large seasonal gatherings. And marriage was not a private romantic decision. It affected families, it affected property and alliances. It affected labor, children, inheritances, and the strength of the community. The harvest season also symbolized fertility and partnerships and exchange. And for us, this did not have to be interpreted as a romantic marriage. So for us today, why don't we ask, what am I choosing to commit to during this next season? Is there one thing I can commit to for 1 year and a day? Which relationships are reciprocal? Or which ones are helping my life grow? Looking back, did you make a promise that no longer really fits who you are? Or maybe commitments that need to be changed? Or even agreements that need to end? It's okay to change, and the harvest helps us evaluate not only what we have produced, but also what we're willing to continue tending. Now, we have a sacred symbol, and it is one of my most favorite foods. It is bread. And it is the strongest symbol of Lammas. The seed is buried in the darkness. It breaks open. The plant grows. The grain ripens. It's cut down. It's separated, grounded, flour mixed. The dough is kneaded. It rests, put in the heat, and it transforms. This bread contains an entire spiritual teaching. Transformation or change is rarely just a single beautiful moment. You have to go into the darkness. Something has to break open. There has to be pressure. There is waiting. Sometimes it involves heat. And it may involve becoming something completely different from what we once were. The grain cannot remain exactly as it was and also become bread. And we cannot remain exactly as we were and enter a new season of life. This doesn't mean that suffering's always necessary or that every hardship was spiritually assigned to us. I do not like that thought. It just means that when changes happen, we can choose to gather the wisdom from it. Ask ourselves, what part of me has become stronger? What do you want to nourish in your life? Now, I would like to offer you just a very simple at-home practice. You don't have to perform any complicated ceremony. I am probably the most kiss person there is. Keep it simple. Choose a small piece of bread. It can be cornbread, roll, cracker, anything else like that. Put it on a plate. Add a seasonal fruit, a flower. Before eating, pause and remember the journey of this food. Remember the seed and the soil and the water, the sunlight and the labor and the transportation, the preparation, and every person whose work helped bring it to you. Then give thanks to each of those. Thank the earth for what nourishes you, and thank you for the visible and invisible hands that support your life. Honor what is grown and what's still growing, and give gratitude. Break the bread and eat it slowly. As you eat, name one thing that has grown within you this year. That's enough. Ritual does not need to be elaborate to be sacred. Now, if you would like to join me for some ritual that I consider very simple, this Sunday I'm going to be leading a special women's circle to honor this season. It's at Cosmic Connections in Nashville. You can register at yourcosmicconnections.com or on my website at bertena.org. And we're going to gather to honor this first harvest. We're going to reflect upon what is ripening within our lives. I'm going to tell more of the history and the symbolism and share community. You don't have to follow any particular tradition. You don't have to have any specific clothes or beliefs. I just want you to come as you are. Just come, bring your experiences from this year, bring your questions, and bring part of your life that is flourishing and the part that still is waiting for rain. The circle is not performance, it's just a place to be witnessed. And I'm really grateful to Cosmic Connections for sponsoring this podcast and providing a space where people can learn and gather and explore and connect. Remember to use the code Bertena, Bertena, podcast 10 to receive 10% off some of the purchases. Come in a little bit early. Do some shopping. It's August the 2nd at 6 p.m. yourcosmicconnections.com. Now, I have a special gift for you because some of you all, with the code Bertena Podcast 10, you can receive 10% off on online purchases as well. But I would love for you all to sign up for my newsletter. On my website, bertena.org, you go to the first page, you scroll all the way down to the bottom. When you sign up, I'm going to gift you access to what's called the Wheel of the Year monthly mini lessons. This is worth over $60. And what it does, it helps you understand not just this circle, this festival, but it helps you understand all the seasonal turning points from the Wheel of the Year. The Wheel of the Year reminds us that life isn't a straight line, and it helps us observe all of these changes. And it also helps us become more compassionate towards our own cycles. We stop expecting ourselves to be endlessly productive. We learn to rest, we learn to release, we learn to begin, we learn to be patient. So if you go to Bertena, Bertena.org, scroll to the bottom, join the newsletter, I will send you the Wheel of the Year mini lesson, add you for my newsletter, and you'll get lots of information, free blogs, events, Zoom classes, all of that. But before we close, I want you to take a moment to think about your own first harvest. You don't have to close your eyes unless you're somewhere safe and comfortable. I know some of you all listen to me when you're working out or driving, so maybe wait on that or just take a break. But take a slow breath if you can and think back to the beginning of this year. What were you hoping to create? What were you trying to heal? What were you learning? And what felt uncertain? Now I want you to consider where you are today. Do not focus only on what remains unfinished. Look for the first fruit. It might be small. Maybe no one can see it yet. Maybe it's more internal than external. And maybe your harvest is the courage to begin again, just to try again, to have more trust in yourself. I want you to place a hand over your heart and say, I honor what was grown. I honor the work that brought me here. I honor those who helped prepare the way. I gather the wisdom of this season. I release the belief that I must destroy myself to create abundance. And I allow my harvest to nourish me too. Take another deep breath and let those words settle into your body. Lammas and Lughnasadh. remind us that celebration and remembrance belong together. This is the wisdom of the first harvest. You don't have to wait until everything is finished to honor how far you've come. Right now, gather what is ready, bless what's still growing, and thank those that's helped you. And that's it. Remember to include yourself among those who deserve to be nourished. I want to thank you for sharing this sacred time with me. And I hope that you'll join me this Sunday for a Lammas Lughnasadh Women's Circle at Cosmic Connections in Nashville. And again, I want to thank them for being our sponsor. Remember to visit yourcosmicconnections.com and use Bertena Podcast 10 to get 10% off anything you wish in the store. May you recognize the harvest already growing within your life, and may you honor your many gifts. May you remember the women who prepared the way. May you work, may your work nourish you as deeply as it nourishes others. And may you trust the sacred turning of the seasons. And until we gather again, I want you to take care of yourself, trust your intuition, and create a little sanctuary wherever you go.